Thank you very much for the introduction, Christian. I think you should by now see my PowerPoint presentation. I will give you a tour of what the German skilled craft sector is doing in vocational education and training. But first of all, I will say a bit more about who we actually are. Whom are you actually talking to or listening to now? So who are we? Then a very quick reminder of the dual system in Germany, just to refresh, why do companies actually care about vocational orientation? And then we will go into attracting young people to the craft sector and what did the craft sector do, especially in the times of the pandemic. And afterwards, we can have an open discussion. So let's go right in. We start with who are we? As Christian already said, the German Confederation of Skilled Crafts is the umbrella organization of 1 million companies employing 5 million craftspeople. And what are we talking about if we are saying skilled crafts? Because in English it's a bit hard. Sometimes I talk to somebody and it was like, so crafts in my country, that's like wood shoe carving. Is that what you're talking about? Not really. We're not talking about historic crafts, but about 130 pretty modern professions. And in Germany, we are dividing, for example, between industry and crafts, while crafts is comprised of mostly small companies that are caring for small scale individualized production, so it's not large scale standardized production, and for maintenance, repair. They are mostly operating locally, and most of them are small and medium sized. But the size of the company is not that like every small and medium sized company is a skilled crafts company. No, it's really defined by the professions that are carried out by these companies. And there's actually, as you can guess, in Germany, there's a law listing all these professions that are part of the skilled crafts. Every company operating in these crafts is a member of a chamber of skilled crafts, and every chamber of skilled crafts is a member in the Confederation of Skilled Crafts. So just to give you an idea. All the photos that you will see in the presentation today are from the skilled craft sector. So you both have, like, for example, the building sector. In there you have all this electrical, metalworking, also wood crafts, clothing, food crafts, all the way to health, body care also, and also the glass and other trades. Just, it's a very wide range that we are calling skilled crafts in Germany. The numbers were already mentioned, just a reminder, numbers are from 2019, so pre-pandemic, but we're still there. So the Confederation of Skilled Crafts is the political representation of all those companies in the skilled craft sector, also serves the formation of political objectives of the chambers that were already mentioned, as well as of the central professional organizations. These are like the chambers are organized locally and regionally, and the professional associations, as said, by the professions. So a bakery, for example, has to be a member in the Chamber of Skilled Crafts, and they can be a member voluntarily of the guild of the bakery trade in their region, and this can ultimately be a member in the professional association of the bakery crafts. So we are representing both. Also, vis-a-vis political institutions. And part of this is a coordinating role when it comes to international vocational education and training cooperation. For this, and here you see the first picture of me, we have the SCIVET coordination unit in the Confederation of Skilled Crafts. I'm working here with two of my colleagues. We are informing about the German system to international delegations, for example, as you are today. We can also inform about existing international VET projects, also about what the skilled craft sector can do in international cooperation, support if there's like a project idea of your, that's interesting, maybe we could do a project with German partners. We can support you in developing this idea and in finding a partner from the crafts sector. More information on our website on this if you're interested. So much about us. Now let's jump to the dual system and why do all those 1 million companies actually care about vocational orientation. Quick reminder, probably you've seen this graphic when you were visiting Goethe-Institut, because this is one that I got from them. In the German dual system, apprentices are actually spending more time in the company than they are spending in the vocational school. And the contract, the training contract, is not done with the school, it's done with the company. So the companies are the ones that are training for their own need in skilled workers, and they are the first ones to make a contract with the to-be apprentices. So obviously, if they want to train, they will have to make the contract first. And of course, under this is the foundation with the social partnership and so on. But really, for us today, these two people in the middle of the picture are the decisive ones. And why do they actually train? There are a number of reasons. One is traditional, that most of them also did an apprenticeship, thinks it's good and feels somehow also part of their responsibility towards society. But there's also the economic consideration. It's about their own skilled labor that they are training, and apprentices are actually already productive during their training period. So it's not only cost, it's also benefit. On the other hand, especially if they can offer long-term employment and the apprentice stays, which many do when they get this offer. And also there's an opportunity cost if you are not training and you will have to fill a position. It costs time, it costs money to fill this position, and this is money you spare when you train yourself. And on top, you really, really know the people you train, you know what they can do, you know if they still have any weaknesses, and they are very loyal to their apprenticing company. So there are a lot of reasons for employers to want to train and to want to attract the best young people to their profession and to their company, which is one of the tasks that they see for themselves in vocational orientation when they get active and involved. And now you might also say, okay, I can somehow understand what the employer wants, but why should any young person who can maybe even study go and do an apprenticeship in a skilled crafts company? They are small and everything. Well, there are a lot of even people who could go to university that are deciding to do a skilled crafts apprenticeship. In the skilled craft sector, it's about 8% of our apprentices could also go to university. One thing is they can also reduce the number of years to 2 years from a 3 years apprenticeship. That's actually a very good qualification. If you go into vocational training, you also do your Meister qualification, which is after the introduction, or the first degree is the Journeyman certificate and German Gesellenbrief, and then you can go on and do the Meisterbrief. This is equivalent to university bachelor from the perspective, and we are at the moment also working on further trainings that would even be equivalent to master, university master, and that are even more specialized. So there is a permeability in the vocational training system. So people who start with an apprenticeship, they don't block their road to a university. They could still do it afterwards. And there are even about 900 university programs that are either dual degree, so they are combining VET and studies, but there are also some study programs that are especially targeted at people who did a vocational training before. And for the young people, it might be they want to make their hobby their profession. For example, the winner of the competition in vocational skills for building violins, he actually started playing a violin, and then when he had to decide for an apprenticeship, he started for the violin builder. And he's so good that he was the best apprentice in the violin building trade from last year. They also say if they want to be creative and design their individual products, they can do this in the skilled craft sector from basically day one. If they, for example, want to work outdoors or they want to do something with their hands, really have the contact to the customer, this can all be done in the skilled craft sector, as well as saying, okay, maybe I want to do something in construction, maybe become a civil engineer. It's not bad to actually have the experience how a construction site works and how the work looks like of building houses or streets or whatever, and to say, okay, first practical experience and only afterwards go to university. And money is also an argument for some, that they can earn money already during their training, finishing school in the age of 16 or something and earning money from day one. Also an argument for some people. And if you do crafts training, you can be your own boss, found your own company in a very young age that university alumni could only dream of. So you see, there are arguments, but to really be convinced of these arguments, first and foremost, you have to know about them and get your own idea of what you want to do. Do you actually want to become your own boss in a crafts profession? And this is where we come to the challenge of attracting young people to the craft sector. And how did that actually work in the pandemic? So let's look at this process of vocational orientation. A bit of theory. You probably know this because you're working in vocational orientation. You know that first there is this potential analysis. First they have to, realize what their interests and capabilities are, then identify what professions fit these interests and capabilities, collecting information about those professions, then getting some experience in them, and then say, okay, decision, this is what I want to do, and realize this plan. And there are some two fields that I marked with this black frame. Those were the ones that we had pretty much challenges with in the pandemic and are still having some challenges. And this challenge in the pandemic is that first, for the situation, if we look on last year's apprenticeship numbers, in the skilled craft sector, we had a minus of about 7% in apprenticeship treaties. For the full economy, it looked even worse. There were two-digit numbers of a reduction in apprenticeship treaties year-to-year comparison to 2019. This year, it's already looking much better than 2020, but still worse than 2019. So we have a significant drop in numbers. And one of these explanations that we find is that they had a lack of vocational orientation. A lot of students simply stayed in the general education system who could maybe have graduated and went to vocational orientation, maybe decide, okay, maybe I will do my Abitur after all, or maybe let's just study something. But maybe not all of them will see that in the long and medium term, this will be the right thing for themselves. Let's see. And part of this lack of vocational orientation is due to the fact that during all this homeschooling and social distancing, there was basically no access for vocational counselors, vocational orientation counselors to classrooms or to virtual classrooms. Events of vocational orientation were cancelled. I think in the time of your visit to Germany, you will have learned a lot about this vocational orientation weeks and training centers and so on. Fairs, a lot of things were done pre-pandemic that couldn't be done during the pandemic. So this part of experiencing the profession was lacking. The third point is marked with a question mark because it really depends on the school, but an impression that we have is also that vocational orientation had a low priority in school. If they already, just had a few hours of video conference during a day, if at all, maybe they weren't talking about vocational orientation, but still trying to teach the students math and science and everything that was actually also in their plans, and maybe not putting so much stress on vocational orientation. And due to social distancing, both young people and companies were actually hesitant about doing internships and agreeing on internships, because if you're not supposed to have contact to a lot of people, why get into a workshop with a lot of people you don't know? Now in Germany, numbers are low again. This hesitant approach is getting down as well. But what did we do as the Confederation of Skilled Crafts and Businesses, and also what did our member organizations do? One thing is use all available means of communication to inform and engage young people and their parents about it's actually important to think of your future, do vocational orientation, crafts professions are a very good option, and all of these things also culminate in the so-called Summer of Vocational Education and Training. This is a campaign that Skilled Crafts is doing together with the government on the one hand, but also other associations such as the German Employers Association and also the Association of Industry and Commerce. A lot of them are also active in the Summer of Vocational Education and Training. So to summarize a bit in what we heard until now, in this process of vocational orientation, where chambers could help is in this first phase of potential analysis, identifying professions and collecting information they can introduce to the skilled craft sector, get impressions and offer information. Especially pre-pandemic and also during the pandemic, in this phase of experiencing professions in question, offering this opportunity and first-hand experience is a strength of the skilled craft sector. And then when it comes to deciding and realizing your plan, what profession to learn, then paving the way for this apprenticeship contracts, this is also where crafts organizations were very active in and are very active in. So let's look at these phases maybe in more detail. In phase one, offering information and introducing to the skilled craft sector. Already pre-pandemic, we started in the early 2010s, the so-called image campaign on the skilled craft sector to improve the image in society. For example, with somehow funny slogans and just showing skilled crafts is a good sector for working. It also offers a lot of engaging and emotionally engaging material. For example, on the one hand, funny slogans such as one of my favorite is, "We help you to understand your partner acoustically," the hearing aid specialists. or also the heavy metal fans from the metalworking trade. Also at the moment on YouTube, you can watch like so-called mini documentations about people who have gone their way, went into skilled crafts and are very satisfied with it and are like showing their way, how they got to where they are and what their profession means for them personally at the moment. So people can be emotionally involved. And also when it comes to the profession finding information, there is the so-called Berufe-Checker, which is actually some chat bot on WhatsApp. So you can write there and say, okay, like professional orientation, and it asks you some questions such as, do you want to work indoor or outdoor? Do you want to work more with technology or art, in a team or alone? Do you prefer light or heavy stuff? And do you want to work with people or machines? And with these 5 questions, you say something between 1 and 5, and then it proposes you some professions that fit into what you said. So it then proposes you something, and you can look at the profiles and get some information about what is there. Another approach of getting people interested in the skilled crafts. So what I've said until now was also there pre-pandemic. Now, what did they do during the pandemic? This is are examples from the Chamber of Skilled Crafts in Erfurt. They all also used all means that they had. For example, they created a card game that can be played by school classes when they can come together. And for example, if you scan one of these cards, then you have a small picture of this crafts person and the trade, and you can also download and look at more information about the trade. For example, what do people actually earn? What do they do all day? This is very much on the informational part. Also, then the young lady on the upper corner of the slide is a known influencer from the area of this Chamber of Crafts, and they also made online events with her to get all her followers to at least hear something about vocations and professions in the skilled craft sector. They also did a beauty voting of like faces of the skilled craft sector. You could vote online who's the prettiest craftswoman or craftsman. So they did a lot of this. They also had something with a quiz with radio stations, where the radio station posted some move from the skilled craft sector, and then the people could guess which profession this is actually about and from, and some craftsmen of the profession would then tell a bit more about it. So having just information about crafts professions on the channels that young people are actually consuming. This was one approach. Phase 2 is where we had the real challenges, because before pandemic and when social distancing is down, you can do a lot of things in this phase of offering experiences and first-hand experiences of the crafts profession, such as internships during the school time or in holidays. In Germany, in grade 9, at least when I was grade 9, I had to do a 2 weeks internship in some kind of company and workplace. The chambers of crafts can support young people in finding those places, also offering places during holidays. They can also organize the internships in the training centers in the so-called vocational orientation program. And I think you might have heard about this. It is a program funded by the Ministry of Education and Science and Research, but it is conducted, for example, by the training centers that are part of the Chambers of Skilled Crafts. So young students can come there for a week and have some program of really doing some tasks from different fields of professions. And so maybe do something with wood, feel, is it something that they like, or do they prefer more to work with metal or something else? This can be done in training centers. We've also seen summer camps in training centers. There are also if there's some regional fair or event, the training centers also offered some trying out things with really small tasks where they could do something, or competitions for students. I've heard of like one day great event where teams of students competed against each other, solving small tasks from different professional backgrounds, from the electricity trade or from the woodworking trades, to in the end collect points and win a prize. There is also the Girls' Day and the Boys' Day, where girls are invited to look into professions that are traditionally seen as more male-dominated professions, and boys are at the same time invited to more female-dominated professions and companies. This is all things that can be offline, and this is the first-hand experience, while, as I said, with social distancing, it's sometimes hard to really do. And most of this was canceled during the pandemic. Now, in this summer of vocational education and training, a lot of this has been taken up again. So this summer, there are summer camps, there are events taking place, but always with hygiene concept and everything, not too many people together. What was done during lockdown, during social distancing, was, for example, that virtual visits to companies were organized with virtual reality classes, and people could at least see how a workshop looks like. Also, some easy do-it-yourself tutorials were shared, so students could try something themselves at home, which of course also has its limits because not everybody has a full-fledged workshop at home. Even though I've heard of some like tutorials how to cut your hair because hairdressers were also closed, for example. There are also the so-called VET ambassadors in quite some chambers in Germany, that are young people who are doing their apprenticeship at the moment, or who have just finished their apprenticeship in the skilled craft sector, and who already pre-pandemic went to schools, talked about it, and the students could ask questions to a person that is about the same age as them, which is different than hearing it from a 50-year-old, for example. And those VET ambassadors, for example, during the pandemic, reported on their everyday life on also on social media. So there's at least a bit of this show window into how vocational education and training looks like. It's far away from first-hand experience, but it was something. And then when it comes to the third phase of paving the way for apprenticeship contracts, we also had a lot of activities. Without Corona, you would have apprenticeship fairs, last minute speed dating between potential apprentices and their employers. And a lot of this could also be done in a virtual form. Here you see, for example, a screenshot from a so-called VET fair that was conducted online in Thüringen, which is, as you know, a land of one of the 16 Länder of Germany. They also created a common and shared landing page So people who are looking for apprenticeship places in Thüringen, they can also go via this page and then find who are actually the people that they can talk to. They also, the Chamber of Crafts in Erfurt is also cooperating a lot with other actors in the region, and for example did this leaflet that you see on the upper right corner, where you see, okay, who are actually the people to talk to about general questions, who are the people to talk to about if I want to go to crafts or to industry, and you would have the contact information on the leaflet. There is, of course, also the contact of the people from the Bundesagentur für Arbeit with whom you're talking to later. So it's a network, everybody's doing something, and they are also working together locally. They also, for example, offered some online consultation hours also for companies searching for apprenticeships, which is what is advertised on the lower right corner. So a lot of those counseling services could also be provided during the pandemic via online services, video conferencing, and so on. So these were my examples from the skill craft sector in Germany. We can now go into an open discussion, and if you don't have questions, I have some questions to you, but maybe for now I will stop my presentation and hand over to Chris.